Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Today, we're cracking open the file on U.S. antimony.
As usual, before we start, subscribe, like, and comment to this video to support the show. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw this ticker, UAMY, slide across the desk this morning, my knee-jerk reaction was to just glaze over. I thought, okay, great, another small-cap mining play, probably digging for something I can't even pronounce in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But then I started connecting the dots with the macro landscape, especially looking back at late 2024, the geopolitical tension. And this suddenly feels less like a boring mining story and a lot more like a national security story.
It is absolutely a national security story. And it's funny you mentioned the pronunciation because antimony is one of those elements, element 51, that nobody thinks about until they desperately, desperately need it.
And right now, the U.S. desperately needs it.
They do. We are not just talking about a company digging rocks out of the ground. We are looking at what is, effectively, a structural monopoly on a critical defense material. The context here is just... it's massive.
And the main catalyst here, the whole reason we're even having this conversation today, it's the vacuum created by China, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, if you rewind to December 2024, China just dropped the hammer. They banned exports of critical minerals to the U.S., including antimony.
Wow.
Now, to understand the gravity of that, you have to realize that China controlled something like 70% of the global market. They were the supply chain.
So overnight, it just vanished.
It just evaporated. For the U.S. military, for industrial manufacturers, a complete shock to the system.
That's the so what. For everyone listening, right up front, this isn't just normal market fluctuation. It's a supply shock. And when you look at the North American landscape, U.S. antimony seems to be the only game in town with the actual infrastructure to do something about it.
That is the key. You said it. There are plenty of junior mining companies with claims, pieces of land that might have metal in the ground.
Right. Potential.
But U.S. antimony is the only one with the smelters. They have the industrial oven, the part required to turn rock into usable metal. If the Department of Defense needs antimony for munitions, for primers and bullets, they can't call Beijing anymore.
They have to call the folks in Montana.
That's right.
Okay, so we have a monopoly setup, which usually screams profit to me. But when we talk about monopolies, we're usually discussing huge utilities or big tech, not a company with a market cap around, what, 1.6 billion?
I want to pivot immediately into the fundamentals because when I open their reports, the numbers are, well, they're messy. It's a bit of a conflict.
Messy is a polite way to put it. It's a classic growth stage conflict, but sort of amplified by all this geopolitical stress.
It's a total mixed bag. I mean, look, on the top line, the story is incredible. They reported fiscal year revenue of $14.94 million. That is up a massive 187.3% year over year.
If you saw that kind of growth on a tech stock, Wall Street would be throwing parades. But then you look at the bottom line, still posting a net loss of $1.73 million. EPS is -1 cent. Profit margin, negative 3.43%. So, help me square this circle. If they're the only game in town and demand is through the roof, why are they burning cash?
You have to look at the context of that revenue explosion versus the cost of, well, building the machine. First, the revenue jump is partly the commodity price itself. Antimony prices are up over 500% in the last 12 months.
That's from the China ban.
Purely supply and demand. But the reason they are burning cash isn't because the business model is broken. It's because they're in this frantic scaling phase.
So this is that classic spending money to make money scenario.
Essentially, yes. Think about it like you're renovating a hotel while guests are actively trying to check in. They're spending heavily on CapEx to get their facilities online and compliant. That negative margin reflects startup costs, equipment upgrades. They aren't running a steady state operation. They're sprinting to fill a vacuum.
Okay, that makes sense. The losses are reinvestment. But as an investor, you want that to stop eventually. You want the cash burn to flip to cash flow. What's the catalyst that changes the math here? Because 187% revenue growth is great, but you can't pay dividends with revenue.
The catalyst, and frankly, the single most important piece of data in this entire file is the DLA contract.
The Defense Logistics Agency.
Right. U.S. Antimony secured a contract with the DLA worth up to $245 million.
Let's pause on that number for a second. $245 million.
It's staggering relative to their size. Just remember, their annual revenue right now is just under $15 million. This one contract represents roughly 16 times their current annual revenue, and it's a sole source IDIQ contract.
Okay, for those who don't speak government procurement, IDIQ is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So it's basically the government giving them a blank checkbook with a $245 million limit, saying, we'll keep ordering until we hit this number.
Exactly, and sole source is the magic phrase. It means the government didn't even bid this out. They legally couldn't because there is no one else capable of doing it domestically.
That is the definition of a captive market.
And here's the answer to your margin question. Government contracts, especially for specialized defense materials, they don't operate on razor-thin margins. They typically come with baked-in gross margins of 25% to 35%.
Wow, okay, that drastically changes the valuation model. If they execute, that negative EPS should flip pretty fast. But I want to pressure test this only game in town idea. Is that a genuine economic moat, or is it marketing fluff? Could a competitor just spin up a smelter next month?
It's a physical and a regulatory moat, which is, the hardest kind to cross. U.S. Antimony owns the only 2 permitted antimony smelters in all of North America, one in Thompson Falls, Montana, the other in Madero, Mexico.
Permitted being the operative word there, I assume.
Precisely. You can't just build a smelter in your backyard. We're talking about processing heavy metals. To get a new facility permitted in the U.S., navigating the EPA, local studies, zoning, you're talking 5 to 10 years, minimum.
So that's a decade of paperwork before you shovel a single scoop of dirt.
Right. So even if a huge mining conglomerate wanted in on this today, they wouldn't actually be pouring metal until the early 2030s.
And U.S. Antimony is already there. The machinery's warm.
They have the machinery warm. Speaking of which, their expansion is already happening. I saw the notes about the Madero facility restarting, but the fresher news, the one the market seems really excited about, is the acquisition they made just this month, January 2026.
The Montana Flotation Facility. Sounds like a water park, but I'm guessing it's a bit more industrial.
A little less fun, a lot more profitable. They bought this facility in Radersburg, Montana for about $4.75 million.
Which, for a company their size, is a strategic buy, not a bank breaker.
It's an absolute steal. And to explain flotation, when you dig ore from the ground, it's mostly waste rock. You can't put that straight into a smelter. Flotation is a chemical process where you basically get the valuable metal to attach to air bubbles and float to the top so you can skim it off. It concentrates the ore.
So it's the crucial step between the mine and the smelter.
Exactly. And why this matters so much for the thesis is vertical integration. Before this, U.S. Antimony often had to buy concentrated ore from third parties.
And you're paying their markup.
Exactly. It eats your margins alive. Now, this facility allows them to process raw ore from their own claims, turn it into concentrate themselves, and then feed it into their own smelters.
Mine to market. They own the dirt, the concentrated, the smelter, and the contract with the end buyer.
They capture the margin at every single step. That is how you fix a negative 3% margin and turn it into a positive 30% margin. It completely changes the economics of the business.
Okay, that paints a much clearer picture of the fundamentals. It's a turnaround story backed by a huge government order book and a regulatory moat. Let's pivot to the technicals, because if the fundamentals are heating up, the chart is absolutely on fire.
On fire might be an understatement. The momentum here is pretty wild.
It really is. I'm looking at the data. The stock is up 415.17% over the past 12 months. And just year to date, we're in late January 2026, and it's already up over 75%.
That kind of velocity usually scares people. It looks like a bubble, but you have to look at where it came from.
Right. It was a penny stock. It was trading under $1 in early 2025. Now we're sitting around $11.73. But the volatility, this is not a smooth ride.
Yeah.
The 52-week range is literally $0 to $19.
Well, effectively zero,
Right.
yeah. It was dead money for a long time. And the beta is 1.61.
Explain that for the listeners.
It means the stock is roughly 60% more volatile than the S&P 500. When the market zigs, this zags hard. But look at the recent actions, specifically following that Montana news we just discussed.
Yeah, let's zoom in on January 23rd, just a few days ago. They rallied 7% on the news, then another surge took them up almost 9% intraday. They hit a high of $11.15 and kept pushing. It feels like a breakout.
It is a breakout. Technically, it's cleared those prior resistance levels. When a stock breaks a round number like $10 and holds it, that level often turns from a ceiling into a floor. Now, $11 looks like the new psychological support.
And the volume is confirming it, so it's not just retail speculation.
Right, there's real accumulation happening.
That's a good transition to who is actually buying this. Let's shift to sentiment. Because usually when a stock goes up 400%, you just get a lot of noise. What's the actual market perception right now?
We ran the numbers, and the Alpha Vantage sentiment score is overwhelmingly positive. It's a plus 0.52, which puts it firmly in the bullish category.
And break that down. Is this just, Reddit boards hyping it?
No, it's broader. We looked at the last 10 major news items. 9 out of 10 were rated bullish or somewhat bullish. We're talking coverage from places like Mugglehead, Benzinga. The narrative is very consistent.
And that narrative is focused on that vertical integration story we just unpacked.
Yes, the press is eating up the logic of the acquisition. You have the CEO, Gary Evans, on record stating, this Montana facility is critical for processing raw ore, specifically for military-grade production.
When a CEO uses critical and military grade in the same sentence, the algorithms pick up on that pretty quick.
Instantly. And I also noticed that leadership change. Melissa Pagan getting promoted to president of their zeolite division. That shows they aren't just a one-trick pony.
Right, some diversification. But here's a weird thing I found. There's this huge disconnect between the professional analysts and the market price. Guru Focus has an outperform status, which is good, but their average price target is $9.67. The stock is currently trading over $11.50.
That's a classic case of analyst lag.
So they're behind the curve.
Totally. That $9.67 target likely predates the massive DLA contract ramp-up and almost certainly predates the Montana news from this week. Analysts update their models quarterly. The market updates every second.
So the retail traders are front-running the analyst upgrades.
That's what it looks like. Retail sentiment is that the DLA contract fundamentally changes the entire model. They're not looking at last year's earnings. They're looking at that $245 million backlog. Traders are expecting the price to double from here.
Which sounds crazy until you look at the size of that contract.
Yeah.
However, and, this is my favorite part, it can't all be good news. We have to talk about the bear case.
I knew we'd get here. There's definitely blood in the water.
I have to play the skeptic. If this is such a slam dunk, why is the short interest spiking? I'm seeing a 12.3% increase recently. Almost 18% of the entire float is sold short. That's 24 million shares betting against this company.
That is a very high number. Anything approaching 20% is significant. It indicates high institutional skepticism.
So what are they betting on? That the 415% rally is just a bubble?
They're likely betting on two things. One is simple mean reversion. It went up too fast, it has to come down. But two, and this is the real risk, is execution failure. U.S. antimony has a history of unprofitability. The shorts are betting they won't be able to ramp up the expansion efficiently, or that they'll hit technical snags at the new facility.
Right. Mining and smelting are messy. Machines break. If they fail to deliver that mil-spec antimony to the government on time, that contract could be at risk.
Exactly. A government contract is only good if you fulfill it. The DLA is not a charity. The thesis for the shorts is simple. They promise the moon, but they can't build the rocket.
But with that short interest, 18% of the float is a lot of fuel if the price keeps going up.
Yeah.
You have to talk about the squeeze potential.
That's the flip side. The days to cover is only about 2.65 days. That is a powder keg. If the price breaks, say $12 or $13 and stays there, those shorts are losing money every single day. Eventually, they might be forced to cover their positions.
And to cover, they have to buy the stock.
Which drives the price up further, which forces more shorts to cover. It's a feedback loop. A short squeeze is a very, very real possibility here.
And the second risk is just that cash burn we started with. It's a turnaround story. They need to execute perfectly.
They do. They're competing against their own historical unprofitability. High stakes.
Okay, so we've looked at the monopoly, the government money, the exploding chart, the risks. It's time for the verdict. Synthesize this for us. What's the score?
Taking everything into account, the monopoly, the massive contract, the vertical integration, but balancing it against that execution risk and the high short interest, I'm giving U.S. antimony a bullish score of 8.2 out of 10.
8.2 is a strong score. Walk us through the thesis.
It really just comes down to right place, right time. You have a structural supply shortage from the China ban, you have a monopoly position with the only smelters, and you have government backing to the tune of $245 million. It's a trifecta you rarely see.
So where do you see the price going? Give us a timeline.
I'm looking at a 12 to 18-month horizon, tracking the DLA contract ramp-up. My base case is $18 to $22. That's about 50% to 90% upside from here, assuming margins normalize and they deliver.
And the bull case. If the squeeze happens and integration is flawless.
If everything works perfectly, if that Montana facility starts feeding them cheap ore right away and you get a short squeeze, we could see $25 to $35. That's where the valuation re-rates to a defense contractor multiple, not a minor multiple.
And the bear case. if the machines break.
If execution fails, if they botch the DLA order, we likely drop back to the $6 to $8 range.
That's interesting. You're saying 6 to 8, not back to $1.
Because of the assets. They still own the only smelters, and the world still needs antimony. Even in a failure scenario, the assets themselves have a floor value.
So limited downside because of the strategic value, but significant upside if they execute.
That's the asymmetric opportunity, exactly. The DLA contract puts a floor under the revenue, but the supply shortage gives it an uncapped ceiling.
So the final recommendation.
It's a buy, but I have to qualify that. It is a buy for investors who can handle volatility. This stock will swing. If you check your portfolio every hour, this stock will give you an ulcer. But if you can stomach the chop, the structural trends are, I think, undeniable.
Fascinating stuff. A penny stock that became a national security asset. You really don't see that every day.
It's going to be a wild year for them.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for this one. A reminder to do your own research, but keep your eye on those antimony prices.
And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next update.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.